Hello, today we're going to talk about cell structure and function. We are going to focus primarily on the eukaryotic cells, and I will point out some differences when we do have some similarities or differences between the prokaryotic and the eukaryotic cell. So the cell is very organized. It's very much like a factory, and you can see this is the structure of an animal cell. And we'll be talking about all of the different cell parts. This is just showing you a picture of all of the organelles or cell parts within a plant cell. So we'll focus primarily on plant and animal cells. Okay, the first part we're going to talk about is the nucleus. This was the first part of the cell that was ever observed. Very, very important. When you look at the picture of the cell or the drawing that's on our wall, it appears like a bowl of spaghetti. In the plant cell, it's found on the side of the cell, and in an animal cell, it's right in the middle. Now, if you remember, a prokaryotic cell does not have a nucleus. It has a nucleoid region, which is much different. We call the nucleus the control center because it initiates and controls everything about the cell. It holds the cell's DNA. It has all of the instructions to do everything that the cell needs to do. Some other things about the nucleus is that it does have a double membrane. We call that a nuclear envelope. So that is going to help surround the genetic material, keep it all together, and it's going to have the cytoplasm line up right next to it. And inside of the nucleus, it does contain the chromatin and the nucleolus. Chromatin to me looks like the spaghetti, and the nucleolus looks like the meatball, and we'll point that out to you when we look at the diagram in the classroom. So this is just showing you what the nucleus looks like. Again, it is the control center. It contains everything necessary in order to run the functions of the cell. Inside the nucleus, we do have the chromatin, which is the spaghetti, and then we have the nucleolus, which is the meatball. And this is just showing you the nucleus. Again, this was the first thing that was ever observed because it's usually very dark within the cell. Okay, so inside the nucleus is chromatin. Chromatin is the spaghetti, very long, thin strands. Now, as far as the function goes, that is the genetic material. It is holding the DNA, and chromatin will turn into chromosomes. And we'll kind of talk about the different forms of the genetic material when we talk about the cell cycle. The nucleolus is the meatball. It's found inside of the nucleus, and the nucleus can have more than one. Okay, the whole function of the nucleolus is to make ribosomes, and we'll learn about the function of the ribosomes in a couple minutes. Okay, now outside of the nucleus is cytoplasm. It is found throughout the cell. Okay, and one thing we're going to see when we talk about cell transports is that often a plant cell does not have the cytoplasm fill completely, and we'll kind of point out why that is as we go through these notes. It has the consistency of jello. It's very gel-like. It's made up of water and other substances. Now the main function is it's going to surround the organelles, and chemical reactions, or the things that are going on in the cell, will happen in the cytoplasm. Okay, the composition does change throughout the cell's life. It really depends on what the cell is doing, but pretty much on average it is 70% water and 30% of either proteins, fats, carbohydrates, nucleic acids, and any combination depending on what the cell is doing. So again, the cytoplasm lays outside of the nucleus, and it's going to hold all of the cell parts. So this is the nucleus right here. So all of this is going to be your cytoplasm. Okay, so organelles are the cell parts. Those are the parts of the cell that has its own structure and function. And that's what we're going to focus on now. These are the ones that are going to carry out the different life processes for that cell. Okay, so ribosomes. Ribosomes are found in both prokaryotes and eukaryote cells. They can be either found floating around, or they can be attached to a structure called the endoplasmic reticulum, or the ER. So the ribosomes that are in a prokaryotic cell are just floating around. Okay, they do have an appearance of just dots. And we call them the assembly workers of the cells because they make proteins. And if you remember, the nucleolus was the one that actually produced the ribosomes. And we'll talk more about ribosomes when we go into protein synthesis. There's actually two parts of the ribosome. Okay, so it is a very plentiful organelle. And just to give you an idea, in a prokaryotic cell, it may have as many as 15,000 different ribosomes, and a eukaryotic cell will contain many more. Okay, so again, these are the actual assembly workers making protein. And this is the most common organelle in the cell, and they are the only organelle that is found in a prokaryotic cell. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the ER, or the endoplasmic reticulum. So if you remember, we said ribosomes can be attached to the sides of the ER. So this is what we're going to talk about. The ER is often next to the nucleus, and there are two main types. There's a smooth ER and a rough ER. It looks like a series of folded membranes, and we could kind of call it the transportation system of the cell because it does connect things within the cells. And it's very important in biosynthesis reactions, especially making proteins. So we have the two types, the rough ER and the smooth ER. The rough ER has ribosomes attached to it. It does allow the cell to make more membrane, and it also helps to make protein. Smooth ER does not have any ribosomes attached to it, and this makes lipids. It helps break down harmful substances, and it also stores calcium ions. So it's very important in its function. Okay, especially like in the human liver, it will break down things like alcohol and such. So just to show you, this is the rough ER. It has ribosomes attached, and you can see how it's like a series of membranes. Again, this is just a pen mark. I apologize about that, but this is what it would look like underneath the microscope. Okay, the rough ER is often continuous with the nuclear envelope. Okay, and we have rough and we have smooth ER, and the smooth ER does not have any ribosomes on it. Okay, so the next organelle we're going to talk about is the Golgi apparatus. This could be called the Golgi apparatus, the Golgi complex, just Golgi bodies, or just the plain Golgi. Obviously, it's named Golgi because a guy named Golgi was the one who discovered it. And it was discovered in 1898. So this is typically found above the nucleus. It is tubular, but it's more flattened with curves in it. We call the Golgi apparatus the packaging and shipping department. And why we call it that is because it helps to make the protein. It will modify it, sort it, and package the protein to get it out of the cell. If the protein is not complete, it will send it back to get made better, or it will fix it itself. And you can see it's a little different in the structure because it's a little bit more flattened and curved edges. All right, the mighty mitochondria is next. We call it the mighty mitochondria because it is the powerhouse of the cell. We can find these throughout the cell, and they look like lima beans. The main function is that it supplies the energy. So when you eat your carbohydrates, your lipids, that is where those molecules are broken down to release the ATP, or the energy that the cell needs. The more mitochondria the cell has, the more energy that it needs. Now, what's so cool about it is it does have DNA and RNA inside of it. There's this thing called the mitochondrial DNA. Mitochondrial DNA is only passed on through women. So everybody has their mother's mitochondrial DNA. So me and my sister both have my mom's mitochondrial DNA in there. Okay, we have the same mitochondrial DNA as my Uncle John, because that's my mom's brother who got that from their grandma. So we can pass mitochondrial DNA through families. It's not as individualized as your nuclear DNA, but it is very helpful with figuring out missing bodies and so forth. And mitochondria does have a double membrane. Now, the more folding of that double membrane and the more mitochondria the cell has, the more energy that that cell will need. So you could see here, we have the folding of the inner membrane, okay, and the mitochondria does appear to me like a lima bean. The mighty mitochondria is for energy. Okay. Plastids are only found in plant cells and algae. It is not found in the animal cell. Now, they have different structures depending on what type of plastid it is. As far as the general gist of what a plastid does is it's going to produce carbohydrates. A lot of them are green, like chloroplasts. Okay, so we're going to go through the different types. So we have chloroplasts, which are containing the green pigment called chlorophyll, which is very important in photosynthesis. We have carotene, which is yellowish orange, which is very important in the production of vitamin A. Chromoplasts could be red, orange, yellow, and that's what's going to give the flower petals their distinctive colors. Leucoplasts are clear, they're colorless, and that is where we're making the actual starch. And again, plastids are only found in in plant cells, not in animal cells. And this is just showing you a green chloroplast. And we'll talk a little bit more about this structure when we talk about photosynthesis. Okay, vacuoles. Vacuoles are found throughout the cell. In a plant cell, it is huge, and it's found in the center of the cell. Now, that is why we said the cytoplasm does not fill completely, because of the fact that the vacuole can be shrunk in a plant cell, and then that would mean that there's no space left. All right, and you'll see that as we go through plasmolysis. But we call vacuoles the storage room because it stores nutrients, water, and waste. And it is very common. This is the vacuole of a plant cell. You could see it's huge, and that is right in the center. Okay, again, it's just showing you the vacuole. Okay, a contractile vacuole is found in protists, and it kind of looks like a bike wheel. It has a hub that expels the water to the outside, and these little spokes that go from the center that's going to collect the outside water. So it's going to be very helpful in regulating the amount of water within the protists. And you can see here the contractile vacuole. Okay, lysosomes are often attached to the vacuoles in an animal cell. And this is a little bit more common in an animal cell. We call this the recycling centers because they break down big molecules or damaged or worn molecules, and they make them available for reuse. They are also important in digestion and also to fight off foreign pathogens. Okay, just to give you a little idea, if you are missing lysosomes, then there are a couple of diseases. We have the Pompe's disease and we have the Tay-Sachs disease. Okay, and this is just showing you the lysosomes and how they're formed and such. So we're going to continue this PowerPoint in another video. If you have any questions on these parts, just let me know tomorrow. Okay, thanks.